Hello friends. I can see 80% of my viewers don't subscribe while watching videos. Please hit the subscribe button and like this video. Press that bell icon for notifications. And tell me in the comments from which city you are watching this video. My name is Dr. Emma Caldwell, and this is the story of how the cruelest words ever spoken to me became the foundation of everything I would become. 8th grade was supposed to be the year I finally fit in. I had it all planned out during that suffocating summer before school started. I would sit in the middle rows. I would not raise my hand unless absolutely necessary. I would blend into the background like every other kid who just wanted to survive middle school. But plans have a way of crumbling when your world is falling apart at home. The morning of the first day, I woke up to the sound of my parents screaming at each other in the kitchen. Again, the electricity bill lay crumpled on the counter, stamped with that terrifying red notice. My younger brother sat at the table, eating cereal with water, because we had run out of milk 3 days ago. This was my normal. This was the chaos I escaped from every single morning when those school doors opened. So when I walked into Mrs. Patterson's English class that Tuesday morning, my feet carried me to the front row without permission. Not because I wanted to be the teacher's pet. Not because I was trying to show off, but because that front row seat was the closest I could get to safety, to stability, to someone who might actually see me. The whispers started immediately. Look at Emma, already kissing up. Bet she did the summer reading twice. Teacher's pet strikes again. But I pretended not to hear. I opened my notebook, clicked my pen, and waited for Mrs. Patterson to begin. Because in that classroom, for those 53 minutes, I could breathe. The targeting escalated quickly. By the third week, Mia Hendricks had claimed me as her personal project. Mia, with her perfect blonde hair and designer backpack, who lived in the neighborhood where all the houses had perfectly manicured lawns and 2-car garages. Emma probably does the teacher's grading for them, she announced during lunch, loud enough for half the cafeteria to hear. Emma probably writes their lesson plans too, her best friend Chloe added, and they both dissolved into laughter. I sat alone at my corner table, mechanically chewing a peanut butter sandwich that tasted like cardboard, pretending their words did not slice through me like broken glass. But the worst part was not the mockery. The worst part was that they were not entirely wrong. I did stay after class to ask questions. I did volunteer for extra assignments. I did seek out my teachers during their office hours, desperate for just a few more minutes of adult attention that felt genuine. Because at home, I was invisible. At home, I was just another mouth to feed, another problem to solve, another reminder of how everything had gone wrong. My father worked double shifts at the factory when work was available, which was not often enough. My mother cleaned houses for families like Mia's, coming home exhausted and bitter, her hands cracked and bleeding from chemicals. Why cannot you be normal? She snapped at me one evening when I asked for help with a science project. Why do you always need something? But my teachers saw something different. Mr. Rodriguez, my algebra teacher, noticed when I mastered concepts faster than the rest of the class. He began leaving extra problems on my desk, challenging me to push further. Mrs. Patterson praised my essays in front of the class, calling my writing sophisticated and insightful. Ms. Chun, my science teacher, encouraged me to enter the district science fair, even though it meant staying after school for weeks to work on my project. They believed in me when I could not believe in myself. They saw potential where everyone else saw a desperate, clingy kid. And yes, I clung to them. Desperately. Pathetically. Like a drowning person clinging to a life raft. The bullying reached its peak in November. I was walking to my locker after school when Mia and her friends cornered me in the empty hallway. My arms were full of books. Always full of books, because I could not afford to forget assignments at school. Look, it is teacher's pet with her precious books, Mia sneered, stepping closer. Bet you are going to go grade papers now, Chloe added. Maybe help clean the classrooms too. Another girl chimed in. They were circling me like predators, and I could feel my heart hammering against my ribs. I tried to step around them, but Mia blocked my path. Where are you going, Emma? Off to kiss more teacher butt? I just want to go home, I whispered, hating how small my voice sounded. Ah, teacher's pet wants to go home. Mia mocked in a baby voice. What is wrong? Teacher's not giving you enough attention today. And then she shoved me. Hard. My books exploded across the hallway floor. Papers scattered everywhere. My carefully organized binder burst open, spilling months of work across the dirty linoleum. I dropped to my knees, frantically trying to gather everything up before it got stepped on, before it got ruined. These papers represented hours of work, late nights at the kitchen table, while my parents fought in the next room. Look at her, Mia laughed. So pathetic. No wonder the only people who like you are paid to be nice to you. That is when it hit me. The truth that would haunt me for years. She was right. My teachers were paid to tolerate me. They had to be nice to me. It was their job. But even as that devastating realization crashed over me, I kept gathering my papers. Because I had nowhere else to go. Because this desperate clinging to education, to the people who taught me, was my only path out of the life I was living. The next morning, I walked into school with red, swollen eyes and took my seat in the front row of every class. Because what else was I going to do? Give up? Let them win? No. If being called a teacher's pet was my crime, then I would own it completely. I threw myself into my studies with an intensity that bordered on obsession. When other kids were at sleepovers or birthday parties, invitations I never received anyway, I was at the library, devouring books and losing myself in worlds where intelligence was valued, where hard work paid off. I made a promise to myself during those dark months of 8th grade. Someday, I would prove that being a teacher's pet was not something to be ashamed of. Someday, I would show them that the girl they mocked for caring too much about school would become everything they never imagined possible. Someday, I would be the teacher. High school was different, but not easier. I earned a scholarship to the private academy across town, which meant leaving behind the kids who had tormented me, but also meant starting over completely. The academic pressure was intense, but I welcomed it. Pressure made diamonds, and I was determined to shine. I graduated valedictorian, full scholarship to university, then graduate school, then my PhD. Dr. Emma Caldwell, the girl who once sat alone in the cafeteria, whose books were scattered across hallway floors, who was mocked for caring too much about her education. I had become everything they said I could not be. And 15 years after 8th grade, I stood at the front of a lecture hall at one of the most prestigious universities in the state, looking out at a sea of eager young faces. That is when I saw it. The name on my roster that made my blood run cold. Hendrix Mason. Mia's son. The morning he walked into my classroom for the first time, I felt like that scared 8th grader again. My palms were sweating. My heart was racing. 15 years of professional success, of building confidence and authority, seemed to evaporate in an instant. But then he spoke. Professor Caldwell? His voice was nothing like his mother's. Softer. More respectful. My mom told me you went to school together. She said you were different back then. Different. Such a carefully chosen word. Not weird, or pathetic, or any of the other labels his mother had thrown at me. Just different. I looked at him carefully. Mason Hendrix had his mother's blonde hair, but none of her cruelty. His backpack was worn and practical, not designer. His clothes were clean but not expensive. And when he looked at me, there was no mockery in his eyes. Just curiosity. I was different, I replied, my professor voice steady and calm. And now I am your professor. He laughed nervously, settling into a seat in the third row. Not the back, where the slackers sat. Not the front, where I had always planted myself. Just somewhere in the middle. Normal. The thing I had always wanted to be. Over the next few weeks, I watched Mason carefully. Not because of who his mother was, but because of who he was becoming. He reminded me of myself in ways that were both heartbreaking and hopeful. He asked thoughtful questions during discussions. He stayed after class sometimes, not to brown nose, but because he was genuinely interested in the material. His essays showed real depth and insight. He was a good kid. A smart kid. The kind of kid who could go far if someone believed in him. One afternoon, about 6 weeks into the semester, Mason approached me after class. Professor Caldwell? Can I ask you something personal? I nodded, gathering my lecture notes. Did the other kids really give you a hard time in school? Because of how much you cared about learning. The question hit me like a physical blow. For a moment, I was 13 again, picking up scattered papers while Mia Hendricks laughed. Yes, I said quietly. They did. He was quiet for a long moment. That sucks, he said finally. I mean, excuse my language, but that really sucks. You are an amazing teacher. You make literature feel alive. Those kids were idiots. Those kids. Including his mother. Thank you, Mason. That means a lot. Can I ask you something else? I nodded. How did you get past it? How did you not let them make you give up? And there it was. The question I had been asking myself for 15 years. I realized, I said slowly, that they were not making fun of me for caring too much about school. They were making fun of me because they were scared of how much I cared. Because caring that much about something, anything, takes courage. And courage makes people uncomfortable. He nodded thoughtfully. I think I understand. Do you? I asked. Because you remind me a lot of myself at your age, Mason. You are thoughtful. You ask good questions. You are not afraid to care about learning. Do not ever let anyone make you feel ashamed of that. His face flushed slightly. Sometimes the other kids think I am too serious. Too intense. Good. I said firmly. Be too serious. Be too intense. Be everything they are too scared to be. The world needs people who care too much, not people who care too little. He smiled then, and I saw something in his expression that I recognized. Hope. Determination. The same fire that had carried me through 8th grade humiliation and straight into this lecture hall. 3 months into the semester, I was in my office during evening hours when there was a knock on my door. I looked up to see a woman I had not seen in 15 years, but would have recognized anywhere. Mia Hendricks. She was older, of course. Her perfect blonde hair now showed gray roots. The designer clothes had been replaced with a simple sweater and jeans. She looked tired, worn down by life in ways I had never expected. Hello, Emma, she said quietly. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. It is Dr. Caldwell now. I said, not unkindly but firmly. She sat down, fidgeting with her purse strap. I know. Mason talks about you constantly. Says you are the best professor he has ever had. He is a good student. He is a good kid, she agreed. And he gets that from his father, not from me. I waited. I came here to apologize, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. For how I treated you in school. For the things I said. For what I did that day with your books. I remembered every detail of that afternoon. The laughter. The humiliation. The papers scattered across the floor. But looking at her now, I also remembered something else. We had all been children. Scared, insecure children trying to figure out how to survive middle school. We were kids, Mia. That is not an excuse, she said quickly. I was cruel to you because you had something I was jealous of. What could you possibly have been jealous of? The question slipped out before I could stop it. You had everything. The clothes, the friends, the perfect life. She laughed bitterly. Perfect life. Emma, my parents were getting divorced that year. My dad was cheating on my mom with his secretary. My mom was drinking herself to sleep every night. I was holding my little sister while she cried, pretending everything was fine. I stared at her. I was jealous, she continued, because you had teachers who actually cared about you. Because you had this passion for learning that I wished I could feel about anything. Because even when we were horrible to you, you never gave up. You kept showing up. You kept trying. The revelation hit me like a tsunami. All those years, I had assumed her life was perfect, that she was targeting me from a position of strength and privilege. But she had been drowning too, just in a different way. I am sorry, she said again, tears streaming down her face now. I am so sorry for making school harder for you than it already was. I am sorry for not seeing that you were just trying to survive, same as all of us. I sat there for a long moment, processing everything. Then I said something that surprised us both. Thank you. She looked up, confused. Thank you for making me stronger. For forcing me to prove that caring about education was not something to be ashamed of. For pushing me to become the person I am today. I do not deserve your forgiveness. Maybe not, I said. But I am not forgiving you for your sake. I am forgiving you for mine. Because holding on to that anger for 15 years has been exhausting. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Mason does not know, she said quietly, about how I treated you. I never told him. Good, I said. He does not need to carry that burden. He thinks you are amazing. He wants to be a teacher because of you. My heart skipped a beat. He does. Says he wants to be the kind of professor who believes in kids the way you believed in him. I felt tears prick my eyes. He reminds me of me at that age. I can see why you would think that, Mia said. He has that same intensity, that same hunger for knowledge. His father and I, we do not really get it. But watching him in your class, seeing how excited he gets about literature, I think I am starting to understand what I was too stupid to see back then. What is that? That passion is not something to mock. It is something to nurture. When Mason graduated that spring, he was valedictorian of the English department. His graduation speech talked about the power of education to transform lives, about teachers who see potential in students who do not see it in themselves. He never mentioned me by name, but when he looked out at the audience and talked about professors who refused to give up on their students, his eyes found mine. And I cried. Not tears of sadness or regret, but tears of pure pride. Because this young man, the son of the girl who once made my life hell, had become everything I had hoped he could be. After the ceremony, Mia approached me one more time. Guess you showed us, she said, echoing words from our earlier conversation. But I shook my head. This was never about showing you anything, Mia. This was about showing myself that the girl you called teacher's pet was not weak or pathetic or desperate for attention. I paused, looking out at all the graduating students celebrating with their families. She was just smart enough to know that education was her way out, and brave enough to cling to it, even when everyone told her she was wrong. 5 years later, I received an invitation in the mail. Mason Hendricks was getting married, and he wanted me there. But more than that, he included a note. Professor Caldwell, I wanted you to be the first to know. I got accepted to the graduate program in education at State University. I am going to be a teacher. Thank you for showing me that caring too much about learning is not a weakness. It is a superpower. And thank you for seeing something in me that I did not even see in myself. Your former student and future colleague. Mason. I kept that note in my desk drawer, pulling it out whenever I had a particularly difficult day, because it reminded me of something I had learned over all these years. Being called teacher's pet was never an insult. It was a badge of honor. It meant I was smart enough to recognize good teaching when I saw it. It meant I was brave enough to ask for help when I needed it. It meant I was determined enough to cling to education when it was the only stable thing in my chaotic world. And most importantly, it meant I was compassionate enough to want to become the teacher I had needed when I was a scared, desperate 8th grader sitting in the front row. Now, when I look out at my lecture halls full of students, I always scan the front row first. Because that is where I find them. The kids who care too much. The kids who ask too many questions. The kids who stay after class because they are hungry for knowledge, for connection, for someone to believe in them. The teacher's pets. And I make sure they know that their hunger for learning is not something to hide. It is something to celebrate. Because someday, if they are brave enough and determined enough, they might just find themselves standing where I am now, at the front of the classroom, teaching the next generation of kids who care too much, and showing them that teachers' pets do not just survive. We thrive. My name is Dr. Emma Caldwell. I was once called a teacher's pet like it was the worst thing in the world. Now I know it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it made me who I am today. A teacher, a mentor, a believer in the power of education to transform lives. And I would not change a single moment of that journey. Not even the moments that broke my heart. Because every scattered book, every cruel laugh, every day I sat alone in that cafeteria, it all led me here. To this moment. To this classroom. To this life I built from nothing but determination, and an unshakable belief that knowledge is power. They called me a teacher's pet. So I became their kid's professor. And I could not be more proud of that transformation. If this story inspired you, please subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of transformation and triumph. Your support helps us share these important messages with others who might need to hear them. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss our latest content. Thank you for being part of our community.